Welcome to the Son of the Eternal Will podcast. This is the second of 7 episodes where we meditate on finding joy in suffering in the divine will. And we are doing that by meditating on the 7 sorrows of the Blessed Virgin Mary. In this episode, we will look at the second sorrow of Our Lady, the flight into Egypt.
Now, after they had left, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, "Get up, take the child and his mother, and flee to Egypt, and remain there until I tell you. For Herod is about to search for the child to destroy him." Then Joseph got up, took the child and his mother by night, and went to Egypt, and remained there until the death of Herod. This was to fulfill what had been spoken by the Lord through the prophet. "Out of Egypt I have called my son."
There are so many things we can say about this scripture. It is rich with spiritual meanings and typology. The Holy Family left their home in Nazareth and traveled amid sufferings. In fact, this flight into Egypt, you could say, was the first instance where the prophecy of Simeon, the first sorrow, began in the Holy Family. If that is so, could this be an important part of the suffering Jesus did for our redemption? In fact, it is. In the second sorrow, the Holy Family were 3 fugitives leaving the comfort of their home to protect Jesus from being killed. But what else was going on? In the writings of Luisa Picaretta, Jesus gives us an insight of why he went to Egypt. In fact, the Virgin Mary tells us the reason in day 24 of the Virgin Mary in the kingdom of the divine will. She says, "For at the first dawn of his life, he goes into exile and into a foreign land in order to free you from the exile in which your human will put you, so as to call you back to live not in a foreign land, but in your fatherland, which was given to you when you were created, that is, the kingdom of the supreme fiat." In the writings of Luisa, we understand that before the fall, Adam possessed the kingdom of the supreme fiat, the divine will. This was the fatherland, his paradise on earth. Jesus' primary goal in redemption was to restore the separation between the human will and the divine will. Jesus tells us in another excerpt that he wanted to be exiled in order to call back his will into the midst of the poor exiled ones. By doing this, he would convert the exile into fatherland again, so that we would no longer be tyrannized by our enemies, by strangers, by vile passions, but live with the fullness of the goods of his will. Furthermore, also in day 24, she tells us, "Egypt symbolizes the human will, a land full of idols, and wherever the little child Jesus passed, he knocked down these idols and cast them into hell." So here is another spiritual meaning of why Jesus had to go into Egypt, because Egypt symbolized the human will, which is full of idols. What are these idols? Idols of vainglory, of self-esteem, and of passions. What else should we learn from the flight into Egypt? Here's what Jesus tells us in the Book of Heaven on how to participate in the second sorrow. "One who actually finds herself amid sufferings and is resigned, clings more tightly to me, and does not offend me. It is as if she were saving me from the hands of Herod, keeping me safe and sound within the Egypt of her heart, and she participates in the second sorrow. How do we offend Jesus in our sufferings? Some examples are complaining, losing trust, getting angry at God, or asking why. Jesus says the explanation of the why is not written on earth, but in heaven. However, by being resigned and clinging more to Him, He says the Egypt of the human heart becomes a place of safety for Him, just as Egypt was when He escaped death from Herod. What does it mean to cling more tightly to Him? It means to ascend into the arms of Jesus. How can we find joy in suffering in the divine will from the second sorrow and always be happy even in suffering? Jesus says this about what true happiness is. Only one who constitutes me king of her heart enjoys peace and happiness, and I constitute her queen of my own kingdom. Furthermore, the Blessed Mother gives us a secret of how to make Jesus a king of our heart and to have true happiness even on earth amidst the sufferings we will face. I want to teach you the secret of how you can always be with Jesus and live always content and happy, also on this earth. Fix in your interior that there is only Jesus and you in the world, and no one else, and that Him alone must you please, satisfy, and love, and from Him alone must you expect to be loved back and contented in everything. If you are in this way with Jesus, you will no longer be affected, whether you are surrounded by scorns or praises, by relatives or strangers, by friends or enemies. Jesus alone will be all your contentment, and Jesus alone will be enough for you in the place of all. My daughter, until everything that exists down here disappears completely in the soul, one cannot find true and perpetual contentment. I have found this truth of seeing everything as Jesus and us in the world to be one of the most beautiful and sure ways to overcome any situation in life. Our Lady would do anything, laying down her life to help us live in the divine will. She wants us and will help us to repatriate to the dear fatherland of the divine will, and here she has given a most valuable secret. Shouldn't we then do everything we can to put it into practice? In summary, Jesus goes into exile to call back His will and to convert the exile into fatherland, giving us the fullness of goods of His will. He went to knock down these idols of the human will and purify the Egypt of our hearts. He teaches us the key to placing Him in safety by showing us that by being resigned and not offending Him, the Egypt of the human heart becomes a place of safety for Jesus. Where is the joy in suffering? He says, only when a soul constitutes Jesus as king of her heart can she have joy, peace, and perpetual contentment, even in sufferings. And then the Celestial Mother's secret. Jesus alone should be our contentment, and Jesus alone will be enough for us in the place of all. In Volume 1, Jesus also says, if we consider that it is just Jesus and us alone in the world, and we promise Him to be faithful, He will pour such and so many graces into us that we will be amazed. Let us now listen to a wonderful testimony of how our contributor, amidst darkness and sufferings, clung more to Jesus, especially when the circumstances became more difficult. She felt joy and contentment in making Jesus the King of her heart, transforming the Egypt of her heart into a place of safety for Him. She truly felt the graces and what she calls miracles pouring into her and her husband in their difficult journey. Jesus, I love you with your will.
I correlate the journey of the Holy Family to their flight into Egypt to ours when my husband and I moved to Montana last July 22, 2022. We were excited and quite unsure of our great move, but we took it and we were determined to do it. We had a long and rugged road when my husband fell ill with COVID and was admitted to St. Vincent Hospital on September 5, 2022. Along with diabetes and COVID, he had pneumonia, shortness of breath, and was intubated, bleeding on the spine, blood clot on his leg, had a stroke, x-rayed with 2 broken ribs. He stayed in the intensive care unit for the whole month of September. I felt numb and was in total darkness. I didn't know what to do and what to expect. He laid in bed at the ICU, unconscious, with no response and eyes closed. Through these dark times, I found myself in prayer and great pleading to God to save a good man. Our lives flashed back over me, and life and death. Tears continuously flowed from my eyes, and a surrendering thought came to mind. Lord, I accept your will for him. In the next 2 weeks, the ICU doctors called me 2 different times, at 2 and 3 in the morning, asking me if I was willing to have him on a comfort phase to let him go or not. Naturally, I said, do everything you can for him. I prayed hard after that to the divine will to save him, and down deep in my core, asked God to do whatever it is he wanted for my dear husband. I let go, and I felt relieved, and I entrusted him to the divine will. By October, they transferred him to advanced care hospital and further was bedridden. I was so exhausted. My health and body were overwhelmed with fatigue, mentally physically, financially, and emotionally. I succumbed to it in a quiet numbness. I turned to God and said to the divine will, "Yes, Lord, your will, not ours. You love my husband even more. I trust you fully. He is yours." God tested me even more. We met another hard turn on the road, wherein my husband's insurance was out of network. As a result, I just cried and cried and cried. But I immediately stood firm in faith. Out of the blue, a miracle came. God heard and helped me. God did not stop supporting me. He provided me with the very best insurance that we wanted, where 4 other insurance agents told us that we could not obtain due to my husband's underlying conditions. And through one stroke of God's almighty power, He gave us the very best insurance we could ever ask. By November, trial after trial went on. My husband developed tremors and was bedridden. In this 3rd facility, he had no improvement there. Everything was put on hold. And I thought, only your will be done to him, Lord. I stood still. He went to the emergency room 3 different times through 911 that December. His physical and occupational therapist in St. John gave up on him. Beaten and down, I never lost faith. In all of this, I heard my voice. Only your will, Lord. Only God's will. I observed quietly. I became obedient and trusted only God's will. Surprisingly, another bright and 5th miracle followed in the winter days of January. My husband was gifted by God and regained his walk through a walker, and he just stopped with his body tremors. I was so happy seeing him improving. He was given a second chance in life. God was with us every step of the way. God gave me strength, hope, support, faith, and love. His love is enduring and steadfast. My journey hasn't yet stopped. My husband went back home this February 1st of this year as he continues his recovery. There are still more challenges and suffering for me left and right. to suffering. Suffering is my friend. It does not affect me much anymore, and I am more resilient. My struggles and burdens become light due to constantly offering them daily to the divine will. Actually, there is a secret. Suffering is actually easy when done with great love for God and for our neighbor. I hope one day I arrive where the Holy Family is in, and ultimately in heaven, my final destination. Now I thank the divine will for all my fiats and continuously go on my journey, trusting only in God